Here I am reviewing DC's first villain-led movie, wearing a Marvel villain shirt. This is awkward. Suicide Squad was released in 2016, directed by David Ayer, starring Margot Robbie, Will Smith, Joel Kinnaman, Viola Davis, Jay Hernandez, Jai Courtney, and Jared Leto. And this is... wow. I was actually very excited for this movie back in 2016. I thought that the idea of a villain-led movie was interesting. I loved the trailers. I was just very excited to see how this all played out. And what we got was a movie. Let's go ahead and start off with this review. Starting off with the good. And, okay, to this movie's credit, there's a few things I like. First of all, you got Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, and obviously she has become synonymous with this character in live action. She's absolutely terrific. One of the greatest live action comic book castings of all time. And this movie is no different. She's really, really great in this movie. Really great introduction to her as the character. And then you have Will Smith as Deadshot. And admittedly, yes, he's just playing Will Smith. He's nothing like Deadshot from the comics, aside from having a daughter. But he still was pretty fun in this movie. If you just take the performance at face value, it's serviceable. Not great, not terrible, serviceable. And you have Jay Hernandez as El Diablo, and he's really good as well. He doesn't do a whole lot until around after the second half of this movie, but he's still really good, and he has a really emotional scene before the third act, and he gives a really good performance in that scene. And a character that I've always loved in DC Comics, and a character I was really excited to see make his live-action debut in this movie is Jai Courtney as Captain Boomerang. Captain Boomerang is one of my favorite DC villains. And when I found out that Jai Courtney, the guy from Terminator Genesis, was going to be playing Captain Boomerang, I was a little apprehensive because the two movies I'd seen him in prior to this movie, Terminator Genesis and A Good Day to Die Hard, weren't very good movies. But he did amazing in this movie. I really loved the way he played Captain Boomerang. It felt a lot like comic book Captain Boomerang. He was snarky. He's an asshole. He's a prick. I just really loved the way he played Captain Boomerang. And I also just really liked the way him and Harley bounce off each other with their sarcasm. And also the way he just annoys the hell out of Deadshot in a couple scenes. Really great callbacks to their rivalry from the comics. And obviously the best performance in this movie is Viola Davis as Amanda Waller. She is just absolutely incredible. Honestly, I feel like Viola Davis as Amanda Waller should be considered up there with J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson for greatest comic book casting ever. Like, of all time. That's how good she is in this role. And then aside from those characters, the story here, it's nothing to write home about. There's a few good moments where characters are just talking and it gives you a little bit more, and it gives you some background into some of them, specifically the scene where they're all sitting at the bar before the third act commences. It's probably the best scene in the movie. It's just some bad people sitting around talking about life and what they are motivated by. It's just a really, really good scene in a movie full of pretty bad scenes. And I also really like the opening of this movie with Amanda Waller sitting down with two of her government cronies discussing the plans for the Suicide Squad. That's a pretty good scene as well. But that's about it for the good. On to the bad. And yeah, aside from a few characters and a couple scenes, this movie is pretty bad. First of all the rest of the characters in this movie are either bad or forgettable. First you have Rick Flag, and no hate to Joel Kinnaman because he's a good actor and he did the best that he could with the dialogue he was given in this movie. But I did not like Rick Flag in this movie. He was very bland. He was very one-dimensional. Thank God for James Gunn. He actually made Rick Flag likable in the Suicide Squad. I honestly feel bad that I'm not re-reviewing the Suicide Squad in this series, but I've already reviewed it and said my piece on it. There's nothing else for me to say. But yeah, I didn't really care for Rick Flag in this movie. You get the two villains of this movie. First you have the main villain, and that's Enchantress. Very bland and forgettable villain. I don't even remember what her motivation is, and I watched this the other night, rewatched it again, and yeah, her motivation was so forgettable, and honestly kind of stupid if I could remember it. But yeah, I didn't like her as a villain. And then you have the other villain in this movie. And this villain's a loaded subject, because this movie has avid defenders. But I do not like Jared Leto as the Joker in this movie. I used to like him, but then I started really paying attention to how he was written in this movie. And yeah, he's not good. I don't like the pimp gangbanger aspect of the character. I hate the face tattoos. I really do. His laugh is not a Joker laugh. And then also hearing about his antics on set of the film just sours me on this portrayal even more. He made an ass out of himself, and for what? He was cut out of the movie. And people try to say, well, you got to give his character a chance because he was barely in the movie. So, I mean, fucking look at this. Captain Spaulding was barely in this movie, and he stole the show. I don't want to hear no bullshit about he was only in it for 10 minutes. Anthony Hopkins was only in Silence of the Lambs for 15, 20 minutes, and he won an Oscar for that movie. There is no defending a character based on limited runtime. I don't like Jared Leto as the Joker. I'm sorry to all 3 of the Jared Leto Joker fans out there. I just don't like him. I probably never will. He did improve a little bit in Zack Snyder's Justice League, mind you, but I just don't like this character. And then all the other characters were just either forgettable or not really worth mentioning. The story to this movie, not that great. Aside from a couple scenes, David Ayer did not understand what he was doing with the Suicide Squad. Because Suicide Squad in the comics, and this is what James Gunn got right, is a team of expendable villains who are brought together by Amanda Waller to carry out her dirty work. That's literally it. They're not some elite hit squad assembled as a contingency plan for if a superhero goes evil. Yes, that's what the new game is going for, and I don't like that idea either. But yeah, I didn't like that idea. The action scenes are very bland and forgettable. They're poorly lit. Also, for this being called Suicide Squad, there is not a lot of major deaths in this movie, like a Suicide Squad story is supposed to have. And even in Ayer's original cut, there was even less major deaths. So, yeah, this... Also, the soundtrack. I get that this came out 2 years after Guardians of the Galaxy, and the soundtrack for that movie was a big hit. But you don't need to do it again. It carried no weight. The soundtrack was not earned. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of this movie. So, on to the final thoughts. Yeah, Suicide Squad, it can go to hell. Aside from a couple performances and a couple scenes, I just don't like this movie. Suicide Squad is just not good in my opinion, and I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. So those are my thoughts on Suicide Squad. Have you seen this movie? Let me know down in the comments what you thought about it, if you have seen it. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.